This video was selected for release this month by my doll faces and pop tarts over on Patreon. Much love to you as always. Hello, my darling fellow card slingers. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Kellyanne Maddox. I'm an award-winning professional card slinger, and I have been for many moons, and I love nothing more than talking about the 78 cards, how to learn them, how to use them, and how to dive deeper with them. And today I'm going to give you 10 really diverse techniques that are going to enable you to do some really good solo tarot card reading practice that will hopefully give you some of the breakthroughs that I'm sure you are craving as constant pupils of tarot. None of these techniques involve reading for other people. They are all techniques that you can do alone, but they will help you strengthen your ability to read for yourself and others. Okay, so let me help you get some more tarot time. I am so excited to dive into these. Some of them you may have used before, some of them you won't even have thought of before. Hit me up down in the comments and let me know what will you next be trying, and hit a like on the video if you appreciate this content. Okay, let's do this. The first technique I heartily recommend, my darlings, is do not do too many readings for yourself, especially not about high stakes things. Read for fictional querents. This is something that I used to call doing dummy readings. I don't know whether or not that's something that I still can say or use, but I always used to call them dummy readings. But basically, it's reading for made up querents, okay? Create some fictional querents. Instead of reading for yourself for practice, which can be quite distracting because you're really invested in what is going on when you're reading for yourself, whether or not the interpretation is correct, what else it could mean, and everything kind of gets in the way because your emotions are involved. You read for made up querents, okay? So you think, all right, the querent in front of me is called David, they're 33, they're going through a divorce, they have a couple of kids, they want to look at how to make the divorce proceedings, smooth sailing, and they want to think into the future about co-parenting the children and getting on with their life. So that's the querent, that's the situation, and then you do the reading for that, right? You can also read for fictional characters from books or movies or graphic novels or whatever you want. You can read for any of your own fictional characters if you write novels or short stories. You can read for celebrities if you want to, because it's very low stakes. You're very distant from the whole thing. You're not taking it too seriously, but you kind of know a little bit about them and their situations potentially. But I really recommend for practicing tarot reading solo that you avoid high stakes content for your own practice readings. You can do that once in a while, of course, because you're going to want to use tarot to read for yourself. That's how most people usually start things off, is using tarot to glean advice from the cards and figure out strategy. So you are going to want to do that sometimes, but I would definitely recommend minimizing the amount of readings that you do for yourself about high stakes emotional situations or decisions that you have to make, because honestly, it can really mess up your ability to just focus on how well you're reading the cards. So come up with some fake querents. I love doing it. I've done it for many a tarot student of mine. I have just given them a list of fake querents and fake situations and asked them to come up with readings for those things instead of focusing on themselves. Like I said, it can kind of muddy the water. It becomes overly emotional. And sometimes you're just looking for high stakes things in your own life to read on because you need practice, which is not the best reason to turn to the cards for advice and insight. Forcing yourself to read about something high stakes because you need to practice, probably not the right reason to go to the cards for yourself. So what kinds of interesting fictional querents can you come up with, and where can that go? On the subject of avoiding high stakes readings, another thing that you can do is fun little low stakes readings for yourself. So instead of going into the high stakes stuff about your life all the time, you can do stuff that is really inconsequential and fun. Stuff like, what kind of outfit should I wear today? Or what flavor of herbal tea should I drink this morning? How can I make this day more fun and lighthearted? How can I get more laughter today? That kind of thing. What should I talk about on my date this evening? Maybe that's not actually that low stakes, to be honest. That date could be the rest of your life. You could end up marrying that person. Scratch that last one. But things that just feel fun, they're jovial, they're lighthearted, there's not really a lot in it. Whatever the outcome is of a low stakes reading, it's really not going to affect your life too much, and you can just kind of have a giggle with it, basically. So the third technique to strengthen strengthen you up for practicing tarot card readings is to play around with the questions that you're asking the cards. It's really easy to get into these question ruts when you're practicing cards, and you might find that you ask the same kind of question over and over again, so it's very good to mix it up. If you always start your question with the word how, then you might want to change it to using the word why, or the word which, or the word whereabouts, or the word who, or when, that kind of thing. So, like which way would be the best way to go, or why do I always feel like this, or when is the most likely time to be good to do this thing, whereabouts do I need to understand more, whereabouts do I always tend to slip up here. So you're kind of playing around with the first word of the question and having a look at the first word of the question that you're asking to check that you're not in a question rut and you're not asking a similar kind of thing and having a similar kind of question style over and over again. Why, how, what, when, which, who, whereabouts, these are really good opening words for well-constructed questions to ask the cards, and you can kind of play around with them. None of them are the beginning of a closed question. In other words, they are open questions. They invite a broader and more expansive answer than just yes or no, and that makes for really good card slinger practice, and also I think a much more ethical and much more useful reading. I don't personally like asking the cards yes or no questions. I like asking the cards questions that give me access to a lot more insight and information than that, while still giving me the empowerment to ultimately make my own decision. I do not want tarot to tell me how to live my life. I want tarot to help me to explore, expand, experiment, and I want tarot to inspire me in the right direction. Number 4, record your tarot readings. If this is making anybody cringe and kind of like fold into themselves right now, that's a good thing. That probably means that you are ready to start recording your tarot readings. You can voice record them, or you can also video record them if you want to, but give yourself something to look back over. This way you can have a look at your pace, your tone, how much you ended up knowing about each of the cards, whereabouts you sounded more confident with each of the cards. You can notice how much time you spent interpreting and elaborating on each of the cards, and that will give you really good insight into where you're still struggling a little bit with certain cards, and also where you are really strong with others, which is very interesting to note and helps you to deepen into the areas that really need your attention in your tarot studies. For anybody out there who is at that point in their tarot card reading practice where they're thinking about going pro, I highly recommend that you start recording your readings and you actually look back over your performance. You look back over whether or not you repeat words quite often. Again, look at the pace, look at the tone, look at the way that you're delivering the messages. Does it feel compassionate? Is it easy to understand? Are you being too wordy? Are you not being wordy enough? I'm not asking you to sit there and really heavily and nastily critique everything you're doing, but I am asking you to think about the kinds of readings that you want to be known for giving and the quality of reading that you really want to give forth to a paying querent. So if you're really on that cusp and you think you're about to start doing readings for money online or in person, definitely record your readings. Do it even if the only thing you're going to be doing is giving email readings. I still highly recommend that you record some readings, because even if you're not going to be delivering readings face to face or via video or live, you still want to know that you're confident enough with the cards that you could write a really good email reading. And that will mean recording yourself, not stopping, not editing yourself. Just record yourself and look back over your performance and see, are there any weak spots? Is there anything that still needs to be tweaked and strengthened there? If you want to try another fairly challenging technique, if you really want to up your game in your card slinging practice, then I would recommend reading against the clock, okay? Quite nerve-wracking, again, a little bit intimidating, but it's just you and the cards, okay? Nobody's looking, you're not in some kind of intimidating public competition. It's just you and tarot, and I really think this one helps people to level up a lot, okay? So you decide what you're going to do in your reading. You select a fictitious querent if you want to, or maybe a low stakes personal question that you have. Decide what spread positions you're going to have if you're going with spread positions, and then you set your timer and you actually give yourself 5 minutes or 10 minutes to do the reading. If you really want to challenge yourself, shrink it down to like 2.5 minutes and pack as much information and insight on each of the cards as you can in 2.5 minutes. If you have like a a 5-card reading and you want to try doing it against the clock, you might want to try maybe timing yourself 1 minute per card or 2 minutes per card. It depends what kind of style of reading you do and how in depth it is. That is a really good way to see how much you can pack in when your brain is a little bit pressurized. You've got a little bit of that pressure making you shake things to the top and say them as quickly and succinctly as possible. When you're timing a practice reading against the clock, that doesn't mean that you intend to go on in the future and read for yourself and others in this really quick fire way where you're just blurting things out in a minute or less per card. But what it does mean is that you're challenging yourself to really sort of like put your back against the wall a little bit, give yourself the pressure that's going to be able to show you how much you can gather quickly and bring to the front without hesitation, without lots of repetition, without having the luxury of time. And that really is fulfilling. You know, it can be a little bit frustrating. And then afterwards, after the clock has stopped, you might think, oh, I know so much more about that card. Why did I keep thinking and saying the same thing? Why didn't I go for this interpretation? Why didn't I mention this thing that I know? But that's the beauty of it, okay? It's really, really interesting to see how you improve over time when you put a little bit of time pressure on the situation. I really used to enjoy doing this when I was practicing. It's a very Virgo moon way of doing things, I will say. My Virgo moon popped out there with using the clock as a practice tool, but I just found it so satisfying. And yes, sometimes frustrating, but in a way that I could laugh at myself about and decide, you know what, better luck next time. You screwed that one up. That one wasn't so great, but the next one will be stellar. And sometimes I would do 3, 4, 5 of these timed readings in a row, and it really got me stronger to begin my pro practice. Technique number 6 is the Council of Cards technique. And this is basically where you're not really going to be using spread positions at all. You're just going to ask a question and then you're going to draw 4 or 5 or 6 cards, however many you want. But instead of having questions attached to each card position, instead you're just going to think of the cards that come up as human individuals with personalities, with positive character traits and also character flaws. And they're bringing their expertise to the question that you are asking. So each of the individual cards is a personality, is somebody with experiences, somebody with specific tendencies and specific ways of thinking and doing things. This is a very interesting way to get yourself really much closer to your cards. So let's actually have a go. Let's try one of these out. Okay, so I'm going to do a low stakes reading for myself. Let me go with the question that I suggested earlier. What kind of outfit should I wear tomorrow? And I'm going to have a council of 3. Okay, so 3 people, aka cards, are going to give me advice on what kind of outfit I should wear tomorrow. And my council of 3 is Death. Death is the first person. The Chariot is the second. And Queen of Swords. Okay. So I will tell you right off the bat, the Chariot wants me to make sure I wear some power jewelry of some kind, something that looks a little bit like armor, something that looks a little bit intimidating. Queen of Swords is telling me not to overcomplicate the outfit. Make it chic, make it assertive, make it something that you're comfortable in, but something that also says that you are not afraid and you are successful. And Death is saying, make the primary color black. Go a little bit goth tomorrow, darling. Goth it up. There we go. Council of 3 advising me on fashion choices. Okay, so technique number 7 is for my card slingers who like to have a few different decks in rotation and like to use different imagery. Okay, it can be quite difficult to get close to different decks that have different imagery, and we can get stuck in a rut with just using like 1 or 2 of our precious decks. We become a little bit Gollum about our decks and we forget to switch things up and change things around. So here's what I would suggest you do. You lay out a spread. You turn the cards over from the deck that you're using, and then you go and grab 2 other decks or 3 other decks if you're feeling ambitious, decks that you don't use as much and you know that you need to get closer to. And then I want you to grab those same cards that are in your reading with the other 2 or 3 decks that you've chosen. So you still have the same cards you originally chose, but you're also looking at 2 or 3 other types of imagery per spread position. You're not just looking at the card in one particular deck, you're also looking at the way that imagery contrasts with the imagery of the other decks that you've chosen. And then you gather your interpretation, not just from that one original card, but also from the 2 or 3 cards from the other decks as well. And this helps you to do some card comparison, some imagery comparison between decks. It helps you to figure out how you feel about different deck imagery that you're using. And it gives you sometimes a much deeper and more nuanced take on the card that you're interpreting, because you're looking at other imagery as well. So you're getting to benefit from the way that different artists have gone ahead and interpreted the messages, themes, and vibrations of the card you're looking at. So this is a really, really good idea for anybody who wants to bring different imagery in. You want to do more card comparisons, but maybe you never seem to find the time. You can just use one alternative deck if you want to, but I love using 2 or 3 different alternative decks, and it just gives you a really amazing opportunity to look at different imagery and to see how that changes the feeling and the perception that you have of the messages that are coming through for each of the cards. Using multiple decks and actually looking at this different imagery really helps you to become stronger as a person that collects multiple different decks, and you can switch out between decks much more easily after you've used this technique for a while. If you're at a point with your tarot card reading practice where you feel like you can get closer to the cards, you want to zoom in, you want to step into the imagery and really start to pay attention to the fine detail, then I would recommend this as the 8th technique that you should try. Try zooming in and try interpreting only one part of the image of an individual card for each card that is present in the spread. So let's say that you have a 5-card spread laid out in front of you. Instead of reading the messages for the card overall with each of the spread positions, I want you to zoom into each of the cards and only look at one particular part of the imagery. So you might want to look at, for example, if you have the star, you could decide to only read for the facial expression of the figure in the star. Or you might only read the jug that she is pouring onto the ground. Maybe you only want to read for the central star that is right there above. If you're looking at the hermit, then you might want to zoom into the lantern and only think about what the lantern represents, nothing else about the card. Maybe you want to zoom into the hermit's beard. Maybe you want to zoom into the idea of what the hood symbolizes, what the staff symbolizes, what the ground beneath the hermit's feet symbolizes. So you're zooming in, you're getting closer and closer until every single aspect of the imagery holds something of weight and wisdom. If you're feeling really adventurous, you might want to combine technique 7 and technique 8 so that you're doing the zooming in process, but with 2 or 3 different cards per reading, right? So when you bring in those alternative decks, you're really looking at, where do I find that imagery in the other decks that I'm using? How do the variations occur between the different forms of imagery? And what am I getting from each thing that I'm zooming in on? This is also a really great way to notice when there are certain details put into certain decks that aren't in others. And again, this brings you into closeness with your tarot deck collection, and it helps you feel like you are really connecting with the cards on a whole new level. Technique number 9 is a very playful kind of like theatre kid experimentation that you can do with your tarot card reading practice. And that is to imagine that you are someone else. Do the reading from a totally different perspective. Imagine that you are doing the reading, but you are a sickly Victorian ghost, for example. Or you might want to do the reading, but you're imagining that you are some kind of like high-flying stockbroker giving a tarot reading to somebody. What would their perspective on things be? How would they read the cards from their position in life? You could be a strict headmaster. You could be an alien from another planet. You could do a reading from the perspective of a friend of yours or your partner or whatever. But it's really getting into role-playing, play acting, being a different kind of reader than you are. So you're taking yourself out of what your usual perspectives and your tried and tested methods and ways of seeing are as yourself, and you're putting yourself into a different character. And if you really want to go double theatre kid, you can actually dress up as the different character that you're giving the reading from their perspective, you know. This is very fun to do. I have often laid a spread out and imagined, how would I read this spread if I was somebody completely different? Somebody with a totally different set of ethics, someone who sees the world a completely different way. I'm always really interested to see how 2 or 3 different people that I know see the same situation from completely different perspectives. And I'm really stunned sometimes to be able to get into why they see it that way and why we disagree on things. And if you bring that into your tarot reading practice and you imagine reading the cards as a different person, or even as the version of yourself that you used to be, or the version of yourself that you imagine yourself to be 10 or 15 years in the future. It really, really shakes up your tarot practice, and it shows you how comfortable you are with the cards when you actually step out of your rigid way of viewing them and start to become experimental, start to play around with what the different interpretations could be. The final technique that I want to suggest for you is don't forget to look at the spread as a whole. Have a look at how all the cards are fitting together. What is the story that they are telling? What do you feel when you look at all of the cards laid out? It really does help to avoid going straight to the individual cards and just reading them individually based on their position. It helps to zoom out and have a look at the entire spread. Have a look at what element is ruling. Are there any elements that are missing? For example, maybe you've got 5 cards from the suit of wands and 2 from the major arcana. There's nothing else. So it's mostly fire with spirit as the backup element. What does that make you think? Where does that take your mind to? You might notice that there are repeated numbers. You might notice that there are repeated patterns in the imagery. For example, maybe you have several cards that involve fight scenes, or several cards where people are weeping, mourning, they're kind of like hunched over, they're sad. Where does that take your mind to, right? Being able to see these different themes playing out. It's very interesting to look at the spread as a whole. And if you want to learn about this more and do a serious hour-long deep dive into how to understand the spread, I've got you covered. I did a video all about this. I'm going to leave it for you down below. I'm going to take you on an hour-long journey, if you haven't seen it already, to help you to really break open the spread, look at it as a whole, think about what kind of information that gives you and how to tie different cards together so that they are telling a story, so that you're not just reading for each card individually, but you're learning to interpret how they actually dance together and weave that kind of deeper tapestry. Darlings, I have thoroughly enjoyed giving you ideas for some techniques to help you strengthen your tarot card reading practice. Wherever you are in your journey, I wish you every success and all the joy that I know accompanies working with the 78 cards and really deepening into them. It's a life-changing process. Don't forget, it is indeed a marathon and not a sprint. So don't panic, don't fall all over yourself to get everything right and to perfect all the time. I remember the amount of times that I felt lost with interpretations, or I forgot things, or I didn't feel as strong as I thought I ought to be. And when I look back on those times now, I look back with gratitude for every single moment that I lost my way and I was frustrated and I felt like I need to go further, I need to do more. I miss those times now. And it's not that I don't think I'm learning anymore. It's not that I don't think there's anything left for me to understand as a reader. I still feel like a tarot toddler, okay? I am absolutely a voracious tarot pupil and I'm constantly learning more and more all the time. But I remember those times before I actually knew all the meanings of the cards and before I was truly comfortable doing readings for clients live, which is what I do now. And I remember that with fondness. I remember that as a beautiful part of the journey. And I'm sure at the time there was so many moments where I felt like, I just want to be proficient. I just want to be really, really good. But now I look back and I wish I could have those moments again, and I wish I could slow them down and savor them. So I just thought I wanted to mention that before I ended today. If you would like to learn tarot with me one-on-one, if you have burning questions, if you have issues that you keep coming up against, I do offer CARDSLINGER chat sessions. You can come and speak to me one-on-one and I will mentor you in the cards. You can ask me any questions. You can pick my professional card reading brain and we'll go anywhere that you need to go, okay? And I just wish you absolutely every success with your tarot practice. Drop me any comments that you want down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to see more from me and to appease the ever blood hungry algorithm gods. Much love, my darlings. Until next time, blessed be and happy card slinging. Mwah.